So thanks again for coming, everybody. Of course, we are here to listen to the wonderful Donna Miralle out of Encinitas, California, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. World famous photographer here. His accolades are numerous. I'll let you guys go ahead and kind of poke around on his website if you want to while we're talking. Obviously, in class, we've talked about some of his work during quarantine, pre-quarantine, and I really wanted to bring him in here, like we talked about, to kind of share his journey, share his mentality right now, how to keep that creativity flowing, and kind of what inspires him and motivates him in times like this, and also share some of his favorite images and maybe the stories behind them. So, without further ado, Mr. Miralle.
Thanks for that nice intro there, Aaron. Appreciate it, and appreciate you guys having me. First off, you guys have a head start on what I had in my career. I didn't start taking pictures till my senior year of college, pretty much. So you guys are way ahead of the game doing this in high school. And at that point, when I was in college, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of jumping around majors. I was a biology pre-med major for the first couple of years, and I was doing sports. And then once I stopped sports, I switched to art, full 180, and lost a lot of my units and stuff. But I knew that I wanted to do something artistic. I just wasn't sure what. And at that point, it was mostly painting and sculpting. And I took a photography class, and the things literally just clicked. It was really easy to me. I enjoyed the medium and seeing something the way I saw it and trying to capture it. And instead of slaving over a painting for 50 hours and hating it, photography happened in a second, you know what I mean? And if you had a bad picture, you could just go back and start and try to get a new one. So that was always the cool thing about photography. It was very quick, and it was little moments here and there, and you could always go back out and try to find another moment, and it wasn't as frustrating as painting or some of the other arts where you worked over something for hours and you were unhappy with it. Another cool thing I thought was really awesome about photography is a picture can literally tell 1,000 words, and it's cross-cultural. It can mean different things across different cultures, but also it can mean the same thing from someone in San Diego to someone in Moscow. A picture can mean the same thing, you know what I mean? And nowadays with digital photography, the delivery is so quick, it's immediate, and you guys have social media at your fingertips. So a photo you could take by millions of people, or thousands of people very quickly, and I never had that until just recently, and that's a pretty crazy thing, I think, to have that kind of power at your fingertips, but I think in this kind of era and this weird time we're going through, you can use all that for advantage. The hard thing is going out there and finding things you want to shoot. Obviously I haven't been on a photo assignment in almost 3 months, which really sucks. I've been, this time of year, I'm traveling around, I'm taking a lot of photos. I was supposed to be in Bermuda or Bahamas this week. I was supposed to be in Utah. The following week, I was supposed to have an art show, and all that stuff's gone now. So I have to kind of figure out a way to motivate myself and figure out things to shoot, and one example is just here in Encinitas and here in the coastal community, all the bioluminescence red tide, and I was sitting there at home watching it for almost a month, and I finally said, I'm gonna go down and shoot it, and I'm happy I did. So you just have to go out and find things that you want to shoot, and most importantly, shoot them the way you see it rather than the way you see other people shooting it and trying to emulate that. You want to go out there and really formulate how you think it can be shot, and that's a lot of trial and error, if that makes sense. You have an idea of how something should be shot, and you have it all set in your mind, and you go there and it doesn't work. Well, then you don't want to go there and fail and not get anything out of it. You have to kind of figure out what works. And sometimes those happy mistakes are the best photos, if that makes sense. But this is a time where you just have to really adapt and go do things on the fly and be motivated. And that's hard to do. But I think photography is a medium that lends itself to doing stuff on the fly and doing stuff that's changing and documenting it as it changes, you know, as opposed to other art mediums where that's much harder to do. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but so I think with photography, you guys, especially you guys in this class, since this is part of your curriculum, you guys are really lucky to have a photography class at your high school. I mean, in my high school, I didn't have photography classes, and I went to a big prep school up in LA, and we didn't even have a photography class.
Yeah, it's definitely a
And
sign of the times.
I taught photography. Yeah. I mean, nowadays it's kind of, par for the course to have a beginning photography and advanced photography classes at high school now, and have great facilities or equipment. I mean, do you guys have your own equipment, Aaron, or do they have to have their own equipment, like, for the most part?
We do a mix. So we have definitely like a class set of cameras and whatnot. And then once, especially these students right here, once they find out, yeah, I really like this, there's something to this, then yeah, we absolutely encourage them to kind of go and branch off. And we're actually in the midst of doing a partnership with Sony here, which is unfortunate that quarantine hit, but Sony's actually seeding us with a bunch more gear. And so, yeah, we're trying to put the gear into their hands so that they can go and make magic with it.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I shoot Nikon, and I don't think it's really the gear that matters. It's what you do with gear, it's your eye. And I mean, if I was starting right now, and I'd probably go with a Sony kit because they're just very versatile, very small. Those the A6, A7, A9s, all those, that's the series of cameras are very easy to use as mirrorless cameras, and they work really well in high or low light, high ISO situations. And I mean, if you're going to go out and get a DSLR right now, I mean, it's more expensive. It's kind of big and bulky. It's kind of a lot more to handle. So it's pretty exciting to be in a time where the gear is getting smaller and more manageable, cheaper, and the delivery systems are immediate. I mean, when I first started, we had to develop our own film. And not only do we have to develop our own film, but I had to like, if I went on an assignment across, somewhere across the other side of the planet, I had to travel with a developing kit, developing chemicals, and I had to do that crap on deadline. Like I would shoot an image knowing that, oh my gosh, okay, it's 7:00 in New York. I have to get that image out before the New York Times closes, And so that entire process of like shooting film, rolling in like darkroom cans. I don't know if you guys do film classes at all anymore. If it's all digital, it's probably all digital now, huh?
Yeah, we transitioned all digital. Film was just too untenable with some of the stuff.
Yeah. So like there's so much process from when you shot the image to loading it in a film canister to developing to cutting that image for it to dry, scanning it. I mean, that all together took like 2 hours. You could take a picture, even on your phone. These iPhones are unreal. Like what these iPhones can do is unbelievable. And you can shoot it, and the immediacy of it is pretty amazing. So I just want to let you guys know, like, you guys have a lot of power at your fingertips in photography right now, way more than, the last couple of generations had. So it's pretty exciting.
So let me ask you a little follow-up question on that. What can our students do to kind of separate themselves? Like, I kind of was on the cusp of this when I started shooting sports, was that because of the ease of access to technology, because of that immediacy, there's things that I had to do, like be able to transmit, edit on deadline or on site live during an event, that separated myself. What have you noticed in terms of what you're doing with travel, sports, or whatnot that you've had to do to separate yourself?
I mean, truthfully, like, especially if you're shooting stuff where there's massive people, like at a sporting event, you guys are all in a corral together. You guys are all shooting from the same area, for the most part. If you really, really want to separate yourself, go shoot somewhere where someone isn't. I mean, that's the easiest thing you could do. I mean, why would you sit in a photo well with 50 other photographers shooting the exact same thing with the exact same lens, with the exact same camera, wherein you could wander off somewhere and find a different angle and capture something someone else doesn't do? So like, it's hard to break away from the pack, especially when you're young and humans and, animals in general find, Like there's that pack mentality where you're in a pack and you feel like you're in the right spot. But in photography, like if you're in some place no one else is, the chances are you're going to get something different. And if you want to separate yourself from that pack of photographers out there, and trust me that, I mean, I'm going to do as much as I can to talk you out of being a professional photographer, because the entire industry is overrun by iPhones and GoPros, and everything I was saying was good about the industry is also the downside of it too, with the digital era. But that said, like if you separate yourself, like do something different. You know what I mean? Like don't do what John or Joan is doing. Go do something different. And with that in mind, capture it how you see it. Don't go there and say, I saw this picture from this area. It was a rad picture on Instagram. I'm gonna go to that same spot and shoot it. No, I mean, go somewhere different, you know, make it your own. You know, every one of you guys has your own way of seeing the world. That's what we want to see. I mean, we want to see how you guys see the world. I don't want to see how the other guy sees it, you know? So.
You just hit on so many things that we kind of talk about all the time, is how do you change that perspective to tell your story? And so a lot of your work, like I'm still sitting here just scrolling through it as you're talking, and you are a master of a certain type of perspective and telling the story from your lens, your mind's eye. And so I don't know if you want to talk about a couple of your images.
Yeah, I mean, you could, like, can you pull it up and I could let you go look at it or something, and you could just choose any of them.
Accidentally muted myself there. So there's your bioluminescence one.
There's the bioluminescence one. You guys kind of know about that photo already. But it's just one of those things you're timing the light, you're timing the time of day you're shooting, you're timing different things that you can control, but a lot of this stuff is out of your control too. And that's one thing that with the photography is, you know, you can only control so much. You know, obviously with Photoshop and digital, you know, manipulation, all that stuff, you can do whatever you want. But all of us want to try to, you know, create the image in camera, you know, because it's just less time on a computer, you know. So that's the goal, is to create it as close as you can and how you imagine it in camera. At least that's how I work. A lot of other people work differently. A lot of other people, you know, work with multiple images, or they work with really heavy post-production. But I try to capture it in camera if I can, you know. And on this evening, I got invited by a friend of mine who's in the picture there. And my friend Helmut, who's this kind of old school surfer here in Encinitas, we met a couple years back doing a story for the New York Times. And the story was about night surfing. And him and his buddies just started surfing at night because they were sick and tired of all the crowds during the day. So they started surfing at night, and the story was, you know, go cover them shooting at night, surfing at night. But the problem is there's no light at night, you know, it's pitch dark in most places. So they'd surf at full moon because they at least could see the waves cresting and that. And then they'd also surf with like a glow stick around their neck so they could see each other. So they'd run into each other. So that was kind of interesting. The hard part, the challenge, was just shooting an entire assignment at night. And this picture here was obviously years after that assignment, but doing that assignment and then going back with them with Helmut on you know, shooting the bioluminescence, it helped me kind of approach this, you know, picture, this personal picture, kind of with a plan of attack and more insight of how I was going to do it, because I already shot them at night, you know. And the cool thing about it was Helmut just got over throat cancer, and this was like his maybe second or third time surfing, and that was the coolest thing, was just being out there with him, you know, him and, you know, a crew of 3 or 4 of us, and just trying to capture the moment, you know. So.
That's awesome. And you kind of hit on something too. So I wouldn't necessarily call this a revision, but you definitely kept it in the back of your mind, like, oh, I could try some different things this next time, or you took what you learned from that first shoot and definitely applied it to the next one.
Yeah, and the first shoot, you know, like this is one thing you guys have to think about, is when you're in school and you're doing assignments for school and you're you know, or doing just creative things for yourself that are attached to you're doing it for yourself. You're learning for yourself. You're taking these pictures for yourself. And that is such a privilege because there's no pressure. There's no pressure for you to make an image. You make that image, you know, sure, you know, there's a grade attached to it, but at the end of the day, you're making that image for yourself, right? Like when you're out on an assignment and someone's paying you X amount to get an image, you gotta come away with that image. You know, you gotta come away with something. There's pressure, you know what I mean? And that pressure sometimes sucks. And sometimes some people fold under pressure, you know, like there's been times where I've cracked under pressure. I've seen people drop their cameras and kick and scream and cry and you know, while on assignment and just can't handle it. But when you're out there just to make a photo, especially at your level in high school and college and just right after college, where people don't expect you to come home with a Pulitzer Prize. They don't expect you to come home with front A1 page of the newspaper. That is such a great position to be in because you're out there just creating stuff that you want to create, you know? And that's what you guys should be working on is trying to create things the way you see it and developing your eye and your body of work and your way of seeing things. Because your way of seeing things is the most important way of seeing things. It's not how other people see things. Like everyone has different perspectives, but the way you see it is the most important thing. And that's what you have to kind of get across and portray. You know what I mean? It's just like a writer who's trying to learn a style of writing. It takes them a long time to convey their message. And it's the same way with photography. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's not easy. So.
No, I love the comparison there. I think that's definitely like a life lesson too. So, so all right, let's see. There you go.
So this was in Iceland last year, and it's Skogafoss waterfall on the southern like tip of Iceland, like near Vik. And I was there on a commercial shooting all these Paralympians for this Danish company, and we decided to shoot in Iceland because obviously Iceland's a great backdrop. So this is on an off day after I finished shooting, and I was just on my own time cruising around in a little SUV, just hitting up as many spots as I could find. And I went to Skogafoss, not during the day when it was like overcrowded with like, you know, 20,000 people. Like I went there at the dead of night at around midnight, and still there was 10 people there. There's an actual photo class there at 10 o'clock at night. People are here. I wanted it empty, you know? And so I kind of snuck up on this photo class, and I just kind of like stood behind them, and everyone was taking their pictures, and there was a bunch of tourists and people from Japan and people from Australia. It was kind of cool just to kind of be on the periphery. And I was just waiting for them to just get their photos done. And I remember sitting there and just taking photos next to them quietly. And I think one person actually thought I was part of their class at one point. So I just kind of like, you know, like infiltrated the scene. But when everyone kind of dissipated and slowly started leaving at 1 o'clock in the morning, that was kind of my chance to make the picture I wanted. And it needed it to be empty to create this picture, because when I first got there, I noticed, A, it was a full moon. B, I noticed that the full moon created this thing called a moonbow. And you can kind of see it on the photo there. It's, you know, going across the photo, and that's from the moonlight hitting the mist coming off, you know, millions of gallons of water spraying from Skogafoss. And so once everyone left, I set up my camera on a timer and set up the timer, and then just walked into the darkness towards it with my headlamp. And, you know, this is a lot of photographers do this now, where they set up their camera and they try to get themselves in the photo. So in a way, it's kind of a self-portrait, but I did it more to show the scale, you know, of the place. And I'm still a good 100 feet from the waterfall, and that thing's massive, but it just kind of shows the scale, and you can see the stars. There's a couple shooting stars in there. I think there's one shooting star and one satellite in there. You got the rainbow and the waterfall, and it all kind of came together, you know. And it was, I remember by the time I finished this photo, I had a really long exposure. I think it's maybe a 30-second exposure. So you get the waterfall, all the water flowing totally, you know, you get that really smooth water water flow going.
Mm-hmm.
And also you get all the stars too in there if you shoot wide open. I think I was shooting at like maybe 2.8, 30 seconds, and maybe 800 ASA. So if anyone's interested in doing like star photography, you know, the baseline is always have your lens wide open so you can capture all the light from everything around you. Try not to have a lot of light pollution, you know, like get away from the city. Like from here, you'd go out to like the desert somewhere, right? So you have your apertures wide open on your lens, and then you want to start at least at 20 seconds, you know, for maybe 800 ASA. And that's kind of a good baseline, you know, and then you kind of look at your picture like a Polaroid on the back of your camera and kind of, you know, close it down or open it up depending on what effect you want. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what I did here. And luckily I got it on the third or fourth try. And then from here at about 1 o'clock, I went to this airplane wreck I heard about like, I think it was like about 10 miles away. So I drove down the road, and there's this super eerie, like a World War II plane that's wrecked in the middle of this lava field. And it's like a 2-mile hike in and out. And I started hiking at about almost 2 a.m. in pitch blackness, and it was kind of freaky. And then took the pictures there, and then on the way back out, by the time I was coming back out, it was almost 4 a.m. and you could see the sun starting to come up. So, you know, it's one of those things. This is a personal shot, and sometimes when you have personal photos, you're more passionate about it, you know. So if there's any of those passion projects you guys can work on, things that you just want to go out and shoot for yourself, like I said earlier, that's what you should be shooting. You know, stuff you want to shoot. You know, not to say that if Mr. Jaffe gives you an assignment, you know, don't be stoked on it. Just kind of create it and make it your own. You know what I mean? Like create your own thing. Shoot something that you want to shoot. You know, and you'll find that you'll have a lot more fun with it. You know, because I got through at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was having a blast running around in the dark. You know, it was a fun night. So
that's awesome. That's the stuff right there. I love it. We can just kind of go through here, and you can maybe pick one or two more.
Yeah. So this one here is a recent image I shot for Sports Illustrated. The subject was this Paralympian for the U.S. She was training for Tokyo, obviously this year, and now that's got pushed back. But she's the most winningest Paralympian of all time. And I went out to Colorado Springs to shoot her at a swim meet. And so I did some shots of her candidly, some different pictures. And right when I got to the swimming pool, I saw they had a catwalk. And excuse me, when I saw the catwalk, I immediately thought, there's a clean angle. I can get a cool overhead shot, you know. And usually if you have a catwalk or a way to get elevated, especially at a sporting event or a venue, you get rid of a lot of the busy backgrounds and the junk in the backgrounds. And more times than not, you'll have a lot of that, especially at like, you know, larger venues. There'll be ads, there'll be, you know, partially, you know, filled stands. Now there'll be empty stands, but there'll be partially filled stands. There'll be like referees, whatever. There's just always crap in the background. So the quickest way you can clean up a picture is to get an elevated position. So I got myself directly over the blocks, and her kind of MO is, you know, she walks up to the blocks, takes off her prosthetic legs, and then gets up on the blocks and jumps in. And I thought this picture just did a good job of showing, you know, her freedom. Like when she gets in the pool, she's free. Like she's free of those prosthetics. She jumps in and she's in a whole different world, you know? And I don't know, I thought it was a very liberating photo. If that makes sense. And SI liked it as well. And they liked this in a couple other photos, but I thought this one worked the best because the way it's kind of split up in the rule of thirds. Have you guys talked about the rule of thirds, Aaron?
They better answer right. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So this is the classic rule of thirds picture where, you know, the action isn't dead center in the image. It's split up in different quadrants, and there's also graphic quality with the lines, so that further, you know, delineates the image into different parts. So like if you just like, for example, when I posted this on Instagram, I posted that as 2 images, right? So the first image you saw when you looked at it on Instagram is just the picture on the left. You see a girl jumping in the water, but the framing ends at her knee. Then you see that she doesn't have any legs, and then her prosthetics are over their right. So it's a really cool reveal. You know what I mean? And that works really well if you guys are doing video too. That's probably the coolest thing I like about video I've been shooting. Like, I've been shooting some video for commercials. We did a video for NBC last year with this great group of guys, and we got nominated for an Emmy, which is really awesome. And what I've learned with video is you can there's different things you can do with video that you can't do with photo. Like with video, you could do these reveals. You know what I mean? With photo, it's all in one shot. You know, but in this case, you could present it in a way that there's a reveal to it. So anyhow, probably more information on that photo than me.
No, it's good. So like the question I know like a lot of our kids is you've never met, this woman before. How did you approach that? Like, did you try to build a relationship beforehand? Did you connect with her at all? Like, do research and try to interact with her, or was it just all?
It's just the same as I would probably treat any other person I was gonna meet. Like, you have to have social skills. You have to be able to, communicate. Like, so when she knew I was coming out there, and I made sure I had her contact information. And when I was showing up at the pool, I was texting her back and forth, telling her, hey, I'm showing up to shoot you. And then we met and we talked for a little bit. And then I kind of just told her what I was going for. And I asked her what she was comfortable doing. And I just told her, I'm just going to follow you around like a fly on the wall, just sometimes just pretend I'm not here. Sometimes that's the best thing, is just follow your subject along, and you kind of infiltrate the scene. And especially if you're doing kind of human interest things and photos of people, and you want to get them candid. Like, a lot of times it's better if you're just hanging out on the side and they don't even notice you're there, and they're with their friends and they're doing what they do. And there's other times where, like I was shooting her and we had the pool to ourselves, and I'm directing her. I'm saying, okay, I need this. I need you to reach out more on your stroke, so it comes right by the lens and you can see your hand and your face and your body's at the right angle. Right. So there's a bit of having the ability to direct and having the ability to communicate what you're trying to get in the frame to the athlete or to the subject.
So you hit on something that we talk about a lot. How much of that pre-production process is, like, how important is that to you? Is that vision to be able to say, this is what I want to try to do? And then how much of that do you pull an audible and say, oh, I noticed the catwalk, so now I can kind of revert on my prior experiences and add to it?
It's crazy because most of the forethought that goes into a shoot, you have all this, prior planning, all these things you think of. Some of that stuff works out, but 9 times out of 10, it's all inaudible at the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you see stuff and you're like, hey, wow, that's cool. Look at that right there. Let's try that. Oh, hey, the light over here. Oh, the light just changed. The sun's going down. Look at that. So a lot of times you just have to be a master of improvisation. Like, being a good photographer, like I was saying earlier, is having the ability to adapt, being a master of improvisation and seeing stuff on the fly as they go, and making, lemonade out of lemons is pretty important. I mean, if you get kind of focused on, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I planned for, and you have your horse blinders on, you're going to miss everything else going on around you. So you really have to say, okay, this is my plan. This is my game plan. However, we're not going to spend too much time on any of these things because something else might happen. You know what I mean?
Right. To be nimble. Right.
Yeah. That's normally how I work is, and the creative directors I work with for larger commercials, they obviously have a very scripted way of doing things, but they also know I'll say, hey, do you guys see this? And they're like, oh, shoot it, Mm-hmm. And so being able to have that flexibility, I think, is really important. I mean, it's a creative world, you have to be able to be creative with what you see. So
that's great. We'll just keep kind of going through here until you stop me.
Yeah. We'll go back one really quick on that other one. That's Mavericks, which is a pretty gnarly wave you guys know about. And on this day, like it was so big that we couldn't get our boat out. And one of my buddies, Jojo Roper, who surfs this spot a lot, had a jet ski, and he let me borrow his jet ski. And so I'm out there, piloting his jet ski around. First time I've ever been there, So, there's part of me that's kind of, trying to keep my cool and try to be in the right spot. And there's always a chance of stalling a jet ski and then getting hit by one of these waves, So a lot of times when you're shooting these situations, you just have to keep your cool and kind of really think before you act, and especially be prepared, and safety wise be prepared and stuff. So this just looks like a barrel picture, but this is a picture where you're looking into like, a 30 or 40 foot wave from a jet ski that I'm driving, and then I'm also shooting from it. So it's and it's also an area where I asked another photographer, he said, "Oh, you don't want to go there." And I said, "Oh, I'm going to check it out." And then I went over there. I was like, "Oh yeah, are you kidding me? Like you're looking right down the barrel here." So a lot of times when you got to trust your instincts. If you think a good picture is going to be good somewhere, don't ask someone. And also don't break the rules to go over and do it, but also just go and find out for yourself, And then, I try to ask permission a lot of times before I do things, but sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness too. Like if you go in the wrong spot and you shoot the picture and then you get in trouble, like, oh, I didn't know, I wasn't supposed to be there. But in this case, you're taking your life in your own hands. So you have to really know what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Right. And what kind of lens did you use to shoot this one?
This was a 200 to 500 Nikon zoom lens. So it's a pretty large lens to have on a jet ski. And I had it strapped around my neck. And what I'd do is I'd bring the jet ski around and angle it, and then kind of angle it to the side so I could exit and hit the throttle if I needed. But then I'd lean over to the side and kind of shoot while the jet ski was kind of, just kind of putting over here. And then as soon as I shot it, I'd bolt out, So it just took a little getting used to, but as soon as I got in the rhythm of that, it started getting easier to shoot.
And I'm assuming you did a large telephoto for self-preservation and to like compress the wave and make everything kind of fit in a frame.
Yeah. And realistically, there's no reason for me to risk myself or anyone else getting in there with a wide angle lens. I mean, it's not really a place where you shoot a wide angle lens unless you want to be in an impact zone or get in the way of a surfer. It's more of a place where you sit on the shoulder and you usually shoot with a 70-200 maybe,
right,
or 20-70, but I use the longer, tighter lens to compress it and get tighter.
And guys, if you don't know what this is, Mavericks, look it up. Like these are multi-story tall waves. It is gnarly stuff. So,
have you ever seen that movie? I think it's called Chasing Mavericks, about Jay Moriarty. Check it out. It's a funny movie, but it's cool because it kind of tells the story of this young kid, 16-year-old kid who at the time was like the youngest to surf Mavericks, and just a good backstory on the spot.
Cool.
Yeah, so this picture here, I do a lot of racing photography, triathlons, marathons, stuff like that. One of my clients is Ironman. And since 2000, I've been going to Kona at the World Championships, shooting the Ironman World Champs. I'm pretty much the one photographer that's allowed underwater. In the past couple of years, more people have gone under there. But since 2000, I've been doing this picture of, the underwater start. And I never, all the times I went down there, I never saw a turtle. I never saw a turtle. One time I saw a school of fish, got lucky with that. So I'm down there at like 6:30 in the morning with, my scuba gear. And in the corner of my eye, I just see this thing kind of floating by my head. And it kind of just like caught my attention. So I picked up my camera, and all I remember saying to myself was, make sure it's sharp, make sure it's sharp, make sure it's sharp. Because your camera's in a housing, you're, in scuba gear with a mask on, your mask is fogging, you have bubbles coming out of your mouth. So you're just trying to keep your regulator bubbles out of the frame. You're trying to keep the thing that's sharp, which is the turtle, tack sharp. Like the hard part with this is like the camera could bounce on the autofocus and hit their feet and focus on their feet, So I just kind of had a Zen moment where I'm just like, okay, focus on the turtle, shoot, 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 shoot. I just shot one sequence of him coming across, and then he went and he disappeared. And it was funny because there was, I think there's one or two other videographers / photographers down there, and they didn't see this thing. They never saw it. And I was just in the right place, the right time, which is a lot of photography, guys, is right place, right time. But on top of that, there is a certain amount of properly prepared to be in the right place at the right time. Or if you're in the right place, right time, your camera has to be on the right settings, right? So you got to use luck to your advantage, but you have to be prepared to capture that luck when it comes your way, you know? So, you know, this turtle is not going to come by for another lap again. It came through once I got it, and I'm happy I did. I'm lucky.
Great image show.
This is just a picture when I'm cruising up to Mammoth with my family for a family trip to go skiing, and on the way up, we pull over, and you know, it's not a spot I knew of until I got there, and it just happened to be in late November, and the cottonwood trees are really turning yellow at that time of year. And I'm sure, I mean, for those of you guys that have gone through, was it the 395 up to Mammoth? You're passing through Lone Pine and Bishop, you'll see all these trees. And this one is just at the base of Alabama Hills. Mount Whitney's like way in the background there. You can't really see it. It's behind that Lone Pine peak. But yeah, it's just using late afternoon light, you know, hitting the trees the right time of the year, right time of day, and getting it when no one else is around, you know. And it's probably one of my more popular images. I think this image, like on Instagram, broke the record on Nat Geo Adventure for, I think, like 2 million clicks or something. So it was kind of cool.
What do you think like made people connect with the image? Like why?
I mean, I posted this, I think maybe a month into all this COVID stuff. And I think this image kind of has hope. Like you got this barren landscape, just rocks everywhere, and you got this one tree standing up against it all, you know? That's at least what I get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's the colors and the different textures in it and whatnot, you think?
Yeah, and it just shows life will keep on going, you know?
Right.
Like, I mean, and just, you know, the colors, the blues and the yellows and all that and the texture, but in my mind, I look at it and it just kind of says hope. You know, there's always a way. Life always finds a way, you know?
Love that. I think that's all the images that you threw our way, except for this guy.
Oh, that was, this was last year as well. This was a photo from the Red Bull Rampage. And earlier when we were talking about how do you separate yourself, this was a situation where there were certain areas like where they had photographers, and all those photographers clumped into those areas. Well, I immediately like go the opposite way. You know what I mean? So all the photographers are mostly like right in front of the jump or on the frontlit side. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go on the backlit side. I'll go on the backlit side, try to get something artsy, maybe a silhouette, and maybe let's get some dust kicking up. You know, and sure enough, you get this kind of like comet of a biker coming through, you know. And for me that day, like I was so dusty, my gear got ruined, but I'm just happy I went to this spot to find this image, you know, and it's a place where no one else was. So.
Well, that's really good. Like, yeah, I honestly, I can't thank you enough for, you know, sharing some of your work. If you guys haven't already, please make sure we go and give it a follow. Yeah. On his Instagram. I don't know if you do Twitter as well. I think you do.
My Twitter is just connected to this. So whatever I post on Instagram, I go to Twitter pretty much.
But you guys, yeah, this is amazing stuff here too. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop share here so we can see your face one last time. Yeah, if there's anything else you want to share, we'd be more than happy to.
I mean, I would love to open it up to questions if you guys have questions. I know someone out there, some of you guys have to have some questions.
Yeah, let's do it this way. So on the right-hand side, we've done the raise hand, lower hand thingy, or you can type in the chat that you have a question, yeah? And then I'll go ahead and get you to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. How about that? So go ahead. Questions if you have them.
If you guys don't start asking questions, I'm gonna ask you guys a question. I'm gonna like single you out and put you on the spot. So there has to be a question out there. Think about photography wise, a question you can ask me, like a photo, how you shot, how you want to shoot a photo or whatever.
All right. So who is, oh, JD, there you go. All right, go ahead, buddy.
Hey, so I was wondering, you said you plan most of your, can you hear me? Sorry.
I can hear you.
Yeah, so you said that you plan most of your shots like a lot, and I was wondering, like, is that the photo you usually end up using, like, when you do that?
No, like I was saying, like a lot of the times I have an idea of what I want to get before I get there. You know, I plan out, you know, I have a game plan of something I'm looking for. And more times than not, that game plan is completely thrown out the door when I get there, whether it's light or something doesn't line up, or say I'm at an event and a security guard kicks me out, you know, or we just get skunked on a weather window. We're out in the middle of nowhere and it starts to rain or it starts to snow or whatever. Or so, like, I think what you have to do is, like, go when you're going to a shoot, you know, or you know of something cool that could line up, you know, go there and try to do it. But always be ready to improvise, because you may get something that far exceeds your expectations. And that's happened to me so many times. Like the picture of the rainbow and the Icelandic waterfall. Like, I didn't know what a moonbow was till I was there, you know? So just, you know, and like the turtle picture, you know what I mean? Like I just happened to be there and the turtle went through. And so you have to just kind of set yourself up for success. Like, do what you need to do to get your idea of what a picture is going to be there at that spot, and make sure your camera's correctly exposed. Like, how you have to have an idea, right? You have to have an idea of what you want to get when you get there, and put yourself in a position that you can capture that or something better, you know? And a lot of times my best pictures are happy mistakes. You know, they're total mistakes that not even mistakes. They're just, I was in the right place at the right time and something more, like the scene kind of developed, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, oh, wow, this is way better than I thought it would be, you know? So,
Yeah.
But, you know, like if you're doing a portrait or something like that, the same thing happens. Like if you're doing a portrait, you've got complete control, you know, over your subject at least, right? You know, you can get your subject to do what you want. Maybe you don't have control over your environment, or maybe you have control over your lighting. But, you know, what happens sometimes is like that person will just do something that you didn't expect, right? And then you capture that. So it happens with people, it happens with places, and you just have to be ready to document it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Good question. Bias?
Hi there.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I wanted to ask, what is one thing you wish you knew when you started taking photos?
When I first started, like first picked up the camera. Okay. The first thing, that's a good question. The first thing I wish I knew how to do, and if I could give you guys that knowledge, it would probably be how to manually expose, to do manual exposures, right? So I wish I knew, like, when I first put in a roll of slide transparency film, which is like a type of film that's very sensitive. It's very no latitude to it, right? Like 150 speed Velvia film, for example. That film has a very small area where you actually expose it right. I wish I knew in my head when I first started all those correct exposures. I wish I knew that in full light, 50 ASA is like 250th f8. That's the same thing as 500 5.6. That's the same thing as 60th at 16th. I wish I knew those exposures in my head so I could quickly go to them. So if you guys know exposures like in your head, and you know what it does in the camera, you'll be able to communicate what you're trying to get in the photo better. And the reason I'm saying that is if you just put your camera on TV or aperture priority or shutter priority, that camera is going to spit out what it thinks it's seeing, right? Mm. It's gonna be autopilot, right? It's just gonna take the entire scene, evaluatively measure the exposure, and spit something out of you. When you know the exposures in your head and you know what you can do to fine tune it, you can create better photos. You know what I mean? Like, for example, that picture of the biker I had that was backlit, I had it. You have to know how to manually expose and stop down like 2 or 3 stops to get a silhouette against the sun. You know what I mean? Your camera can't do that. So just knowing little tricks like that and exposures, I wish when I first started, I knew manual exposures. And as a young photographer, knowing how to do manual exposures is the biggest thing you could do to help yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I threw a link into chat for you guys. It's an old film thing called the Sunny 16 rule. Basically exactly what Donald's talking about here is that, like, they used to have to calculate the film speeds in their head and kind of go off of it for shutter speed and aperture settings.
And we used to have a little light meter on us, and an incident light meter. And the problem is though is where you're standing, you're trying to get the light. It's not exactly as the same spot as you're shooting with a telephoto lens, like 200 yards away. So you just have to know what the exposures are, and that just takes practice. So there's no way to cheat it. You just got to learn it, and that's it. There's no shortcut.
That's a really good question. I like that. Anybody else? I know we got some good storytellers in here. Maybe you guys want to ask some questions on that.
Yeah. Let's hear another one, guys. Don't be shy. Come on.
Maddie, you go and travel the world too. You're like a mini Nat Geo photographer here. I'm unmuting you. It's your turn. Spotlight's on.
Where is he? Okay.
What's your favorite thing to shoot? Like for like any like sort of landscape?
I like underwater photography, whether it's like landscape or like sports or like going on a dive, because the cool thing with being underwater is every time I'm under there, it's different. You know what I mean? Like just the little nuances of light and the nuance of what the water does, reflection, all that stuff. It always kind of keeps you guessing, and I'm it's never exactly the same both times, So if I had to say one thing, yeah, I'd say shooting underwater.
Cool. Anyone else? Have you seen that Tales by the Light on Netflix, that little special where the guy goes underwater and swims around like a World War II dive bomber wreck and kind of does light painting on it?
No.
Oh yeah, I'll send that to you. It was definitely kind of a neat experience to watch that.
Tales of the Light on Netflix.
Tales by the Light, yeah. It's actually produced by Canon and Nat Geo, so
cool. I'll
very,
check it out.
very visually impactful, like aesthetically pleasing storytelling in there. So
I'm like literally like running out of stuff to watch.
there you go. I just threw something else on you.
Yeah, I want to watch something new. But yeah, I don't know. Any other questions?
She wants one. Go ahead.
There you go.
Now it's awkward. Go ahead.
Oh, now it's awkward. Go. I'm not like, no. I'm just here to learn. Just keep going.
Well, how about this? Like you're an adult that's doing photography now, and you're kind of teaching yourself. What's one thing that you want to know from another adult?
Like the editing process, I feel like it's really hard to just like make decisions. What's the best way that you would suggest that someone make those choices? I guess like trying to figure out the story. That's what like Jaffe always tells me, like, what's the story you're trying to tell? But sometimes I don't know, and I'm trying to like see what'll happen. But what's like your best like kind of just editing and decision making choices there?
So like in terms of telling a storyline, like
Jaffe's always like, what's your story? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have one per se, which is maybe the problem, but I just started doing like porch portraits. Like I took my cousin's pregnant, and so I just did maternity shots for her because she couldn't get anybody to do anything. So just trying to like make those choices in like lighting and making the decisions, I guess, is what I struggle the most with. And like, what do I actually like?
Yeah. So like, I think with like when you're doing a story, especially portraits, it's a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're doing a portrait series, once you find something that works, then you kind of stay on that tangent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm doing a story like on a subject or a place or an event, the storyline I'm trying to find is one that kind of first pulls in the reader, pulls in the viewer, and then I try to show interesting angles of whatever I'm shooting that make a person look twice, but also maybe reveal something about the subject, if that makes sense. So like, you know, like you'll show something at a different angle that doesn't look like something, and then you'll be like, oh wow, I've never seen it like that. And then intermingled in there, you use, this is just my personal approaches, you know, I use different things like, you know, you want to show emotion, you know, you want to show intimacy, you want to show graphic quality, you want to show something, you know, in a big scale and also small scale. So I end up switching a lot of lenses. I use telephoto, I use wide angle, I use, you know, macro lenses even. I just try to switch it up. So I'm just trying to use the entire toolbox to tell a story. But like when you're doing a portrait, it's a little harder because in a lot of portraits, you kind of want to get a style or an angle and then stick with that style and angle, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard to do because that takes a lot of just trial and error. You know what I mean? Like it takes a while to find it. And once you find it, then you got it. And you can keep on doing it. I mean, there's photographers I've known that have built their entire career off that. Like literally built their entire career off of finding a portrait style and done it over and over and over and over again, and clients paying for it because the client knows exactly what they're going to get. There's no gamble in there. Like if you hire Martin Scholler for a portrait, you know exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get a certain look, you know. Same if you get, like, you know, you hire an Annie Leibovitz or you hire Anna Winters, you know, you're going to get something that it's not going to be a massive surprise, you know, but it'll probably be something very aesthetically cool. So
I also learned that shooting toddlers is really hard. Any object under the age of 5, impossible. So
any object you just said under the age of 5. I'm gonna pull that clip and I'm gonna use it forever. I love it. No, I think that was a great question. Yeah, because we do hit on that storytelling element. It's just really trying to get the students and like all of you guys to think about what is the main subject. How am I trying to tell the viewer about something about that subject, and how do we tie in all those secondary subjects and either make them add to the story or make sure that we don't have them so they don't pull away from the story. And so I think what you just said right there is amazing. Like it's really good information. So
yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Colby has a question, our resident long hair guy.
Yeah, Colby.
So here, let me put the link into it. That's a shortcut, but I was looking for your gallery, and it doesn't take you straight to the photo, but there's one photo of like the ocean, and it literally makes it look like a painting. And
where is it? Oh, is it a kind of a slower shutter at sunset?
Yeah. I was
I'm looking for it here.
Yeah, I just scrolled to it and I'll tell you how I shot it. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it's probably a really slow shutter speed, probably slower than 1/5 of a second. And what I do is you pan at the horizon.
Yeah.
So there it is. Yeah. So that's right after sunset, probably 20 minutes after the sun went down. And I'm up on a cliff overlooking the sunset. Sun goes down, and I pull my shutter speed all the way down to less than 1/5 of a second. So pretty slow, right? And hand holding it, I click it, release the shutter, and then I pan straight across. So this is just a technique. Panning is just a technique. You can do it like this and kind of make a painterly photo, where it looks like brush strokes going across the horizon. Or you can use it to follow a car or a runner, and you can get all the background blurry and that person sharp. And have you seen those before? Yeah. So panning is a cool technique in your toolbox of you know, things you can go to.
Do you need like a tripod, or do you think you can just?
No, in that case, you don't need a tripod, because all I'm doing is I'm panning fast with the horizon and just doing it. I'm not doing this. You just go. If I had a tripod, it would probably make it harder. You know. So I'm just panning across the horizon at a nice, you know, straight line. When I'm following subjects like a race car or a biker or someone moving fast, then, you know, that's a little harder because you're trying to get that thing sharp, you know. that subject sharp. But yeah, a lot of people see that picture and they can't figure it out. And that's all it is. It's just a pan on the horizon.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's a really good question. That image always makes us stop. Even when we look at like some of Aaron Chang's work, it's definitely one of those. It's like, whoop, you know what I mean? There's your attention getter. So
yeah, it's just one of those things that like people stop for a second. Like I was saying earlier, it makes you wonder what it is or how they got it, and it's just, you know, panning is just a nice, using slow shutters is just a nice toolbox. So
very cool. Any other questions?
No more hands raised?
See any more hands raised? Well, honestly, again, I just want to say thank you so much. I think you've given us some really good seeds that we can kind of water and hopefully grow the little trees of creativity and, you know, even more specialness as we go on. Are you taking a picture of our faces, everybody? Like,
hey guys.
But, yeah, honestly, thank you so much. This is big time stuff for, you know, these students to hear, just in terms of somebody that's been there, done that, but also to apply this to different aspects of their life, like whether or not they want to be photographers, that's fine. But these are consistent messages across the board is, you know, don't be afraid to forge your own path and, you know, do your own thing, but make sure that you're ready to seize on those opportunities if you're doing that. And so, yeah, the takeaway is just fantastic. So again, thank you.
You're welcome.
You guys make sure, yeah, go ahead.
One thing you were saying is like what Aaron was saying about, even if you don't want to be a photographer, like learning how to communicate, like is like photography, I think, is probably one of the higher forms of communication that we as humans have. Like think about anything, writing, video, photography, talking, art, like photography is right up there to be able to like just bust down borders. I mean, there's been photographs that have changed the world, you know what I mean? That have completely changed wars, that have totally changed the way people think about big political things, you know? Like, I mean, photography is a powerful thing. So whether or not you want to be a photographer or not, like that doesn't matter. Like just think of it as a tool of communication that you guys have and use it. You know what I mean? Like it's like having a magic power. You know what I mean? It's like, if you have a magic power, why wouldn't you use it? You know, so use that power you guys have in photography. And, you know, hopefully one day you'll be sitting in a classroom talking to students, or maybe you won't be, whatever, you know, like just take it for what it is and enjoy it, you know, make it your own. Aaron, I'm gonna get everyone in a picture here real quick.
Let me cancel the spotlight and then you can do a gallery.
And we're just waving the camera over here. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Got it.
So,
Good luck.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording.